Business, item 4B, Orphan Well Committee Field Inspector, Councilman Redcorn.
Thank you, Chairman. Our Orphan Well Committee continues to meet every other week, and we've decided to procure a field inspector to help with field inspections. We turned these over to our grants coordinator and our self-governance coordinator, which is Candy Thomas, and procured the help from Tammy Leeper, who's the nation's procurement officer. It's run through the process and their approvals, and we had one respondent in the Orphan Well Field Inspector. Tammy Leeper's comments are, because these are highly specialized fields, she's okay with going ahead and approving or recommending that we hire Mr. David Bird.
The form of motion, Council?
Yes, I make a motion.
Thank you.
Discussion?
Open discussion.
This isn't coming out of C-395.
No.
S-510, this is your grant. Are you coming before the council as more of a courtesy to inform us that you're hiring this individual, or
Well,
do we need to approve or disapprove if this is off with your grant for Orphan Well?
Early on, I believe Ms. Harlan asked that we come before the council if we hire anybody. So we're just.
Very good.
Thank you, Council. Second.
Nope.
And the reason for that is that the contract is not between the committee and the individual. The contract is between the council and the individual.
That's correct.
Which is why I asked that it come to the full council.
With that being said, do I have any other questions? Call for the question, please. Yes, Councilwoman Harlan. Motion made by Councilman Redcorn, seconded by Councilwoman Harlan. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to add too that the grant we're talking about, it's been extended until March of next year.
I appreciate you including that.
So,
Yes, question please.
Councilwoman Gray?
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan?
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn?
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle?
yes.
Councilman Rebar?
Yes.
Chairman Waller?
Yes.
Secretary Gaines?
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item C, Orphan Well Committee Well Tester, Councilman Redcorn.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may revisit one item on the Orphan Well Field Inspector.
Please.
We had a gentleman apply for the consultant for the Orphan Well, and his, last vote we had for this gentleman, I don't know if I need to mention his name.
That's correct.
The council voted to not hire him. Was wanting to know, and I talked to Tammy Leeper, is it possible we can get this individual interested again to help with the functions of this Orphan Well Committee? And I called him and he said he is interested. So I said, I think what's gonna have to happen is Ms. Leeper is probably gonna have to re-advertise, and then he has to respond. And then if anybody else, it's all in their hands, it's not in our hands anymore. And he's interested in doing that. I just want the council to know that that might be coming probably soon, this individual, and we'll just deal with it then, if that's okay. I don't wanna mention names.
Please don't, but you are saying that she might go ahead and re-advertise this position that we just took care of right now.
Right.
Would you like to?
No, not this one, we're gonna hire him. There's some problems, and he won't be, this individual won't be able to come as quickly as we thought.
Got it.
So we thought maybe we can fill his shoes with this other individual.
Second.
Charlie, on this Orphan Well committee, how quickly are you guys gonna get started?
We have done probably 2/3 assessments on the 1,600 wells on an economic basis. We've got about 1/10 of the field wells, actually somebody laid eyeball. So we're trying to get that number up, which those numbers, we talked to Candy Thomas and she's fine with them. that we can, you know, we're gonna go back and look at as many locations as possible. But the assessments for most, I think it's 2/3 or maybe even more now, have been complete.
We're into winter months, or getting ready to go into winter months. Again, what's the timeline on maybe going in and getting a contractor and moving in on your first location to
Well,
plug?
we'll talk about the testing next. I think we've identified some well locations we're gonna go ahead and test. So that's the next item. And then we're gonna clean up with some field tests and then inspections on as many as we can knock out before the end of the grant.
As we reviewed in the letter that you sent us, recommendations from the committee about those locations.
And as Mr. Red Eagle said, we've been extended to March 30th, which we thought we could knock everything out by December, but we're getting it. We've asked for 30 days, but Bill Lynn doesn't think we need them, but we went ahead and asked for them.
So 30 days, 60 days, 180?
What are you
I'm not
asking?
committing you to anything, I'm just asking, what is your possible timeline on starting to plug a well?
Oh, plug wells, this will not plug any wells.
Oh, this is just the part where you're evaluating.
Correct.
Okay, so when are you gonna start with the grant that's plugging wells?
Well, we have a list that we gave to Mr. Pipestem to start plugging abandoned wells. We're waiting on his feedback to say we can hand that over to the Bureau. So we have a list already ready to go. Because,
Weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and, the plugging grant requires, the first step is to have a list of the wells to be plugged.
Right, I
We're
got that.
waiting for that from the BIA, that's going through this process that Councilman Redcorn just mentioned. I'm working with Candy Thomas on, an RFP for a petroleum engineer to, oversee the, plugging when we do get to start plugging wells.
Are they gonna also sign off on 139?
Yes, there'll be this RFP that I'm requesting, and I'm working with Candy Thomas, preparing a scope of business. you know.
Is there a timeline on the actual grant for plugging?
No,
That can carry on as long until the money runs out or they
That's right.
replenish it?
there's no time period at all on it.
And so but you still have no time on when you might first?
I have no idea. You know, according to what I've witnessed, Councilwoman Foreman go through, and Councilman Redcorn, as far as I know, it can take a year before I can get an engineer. I don't know, in months and months and months, and then, you know, all this advertisement. I have no idea. It's ridiculous, I think. I think that we as a council ought to be able to hire a damn petroleum engineer to go do our business. But we have to go through the nation, and they make us jump through these hoops. It's out of our control. It's ridiculous.
Okay, I guess that's as close an answer I'm gonna get.
What do you want to know that I might be able to answer?
When are you gonna start plugging a well?
I have no idea.
That's what I said.
I haven't
What
seen
I
it.
understand.
I don't know.
That's what I
don't know
understand.
if it could be 3 months from now or a year from now. I have no idea.
Okay. I just thought maybe you sound like y'all were getting close to the evaluation part. And I thought, once you done that, then you can start moving in on the actual work.
No clue.
Just to clarify, there's two classes of wells. There's the emergency wells, which the BIA agrees they are emergency. Then we're gonna plug those. That doesn't have to go through our
Charlie,
list.
can I ask you a question?
And
Hang on.
okay, sure.
On that subject, emergency well pluggings. Okay, suppose the money that we have existing in our accounts, and it's limited, 180, maybe less. And if we go through that with some of these emergency well pluggings, and it sounds like we might, then we'll be able to access those emergency well plugging, grant money immediately.
I'm gonna talk, I think Paul's
I
head
can answer that.
plugging committee.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we can access the $3 million grant money. 1.25 is earmarked for emergency wells, 1.25 for non-emergency wells. at the time that we have a list of the plugging wells to be plugged, and when we have a petroleum engineer approved by the Osage Nation. If you think that you could do it faster,
No,
I'd be willing to step down as chairman and yield to you to.
I make that kind of decision here, don't you?
Okay.
Right, but, and again, I just want to make sure, because I know that we got limited funds on emergency well plugging. And the one they're on right now sounds like it's getting pretty expensive.
Again,
So I'm just worried about accessing them funds in case something blows out and we need it, emergency, health and environment.
The funds are deposited. They are there for us to access, but we have to go through this formal procedure for the Osage Nation to hire this engineer. And even if we had that engineer today, we're still waiting on, Mr. Redcorn's approved list from the DIA of what wells are emergency wells and what ones are not emergency.
Yes, sir. Councilman Redcorn and then Councilwoman
I
Harlan.
don't know where our council went.
He's,
But we were gonna hand this over, oh, here it goes, Mr. Monson. We were gonna hand the list over, and then the question became, and I thought it was a good one. Mr. Revard said, we don't wanna bring liability to the shareholders on plugging wells. So we decided as a well committee that emergency wells are, it's a whole different list according to the BIA. They say, they agree these are emergencies, they're ready to plug. There's a list and they're there. Mr. Revard's working on getting those procured so we can get those plugged. The other list is called abandoned wells and are not deemed emergencies from the BIA. With the question of, we want to plug these wells, we're gonna recommend these. Mr. Pipestem has been directed by us to ensure we're not bringing liability to the shareholders.
Yes.
Now, I understand the earnestness to plug these, and I agree, but I darn sure don't want to start. As Mr. Revard said, we're standing in the field, and all of a sudden, we brought in liabilities to our shareholders. Because something happens wrong, and they're gonna come after us. We wanna make sure, and you're gonna, as soon as you pull the trigger and say, send them over, that list is going over to the BIA. So,
May I ask a moment? Councilwoman Harlan, you want to interject anything for
Well,
Thank you.
I'll yield to our council.
Council?
As I recall, we left this where this would be a part of the discussion with the United States because it's important to know what their position is. They've been suggesting that these are your wells now, as if to say, if you take action on them, you're assuming liability. But we need to understand what the position of the federal government is because I think that impacts what we do or not. So we may decide one way or another on liability shifting to us, but again, the federal government's gonna have a voice in that and can make it extremely difficult on us if we're not on the same page. So I think that's on our list of things to discuss at the next meeting.
That's a talking point, it
And
is.
once we have a better sense of that, then we can react to it without just sort of putting our foot down and hoping they go along with us.
okay. If I may. Mr. Revard, is there, has the paperwork already gone over to the procurement office to get that petroleum engineer?
The Candy Thomas had sent me over 2 days ago a blank draft RFP form and described how I need to prepare the scope of work. And that is what I'm starting to work on, preparing the scope of work.
May I ask a question? Why don't we just pull the BIAs out? It's a federal scope of work.
Yeah, if I could finish. I think that we're all, I don't think there's a person in here who's not concerned about these orphan wells and these emergency plugging wells. And certainly orphan wells are here, but emergency plugging is right here. And we find ourselves in a place, I mean, we just had an email a few weeks ago, and we've also had people come in and essentially give us some testimony regarding, you know, what's happening. But one of the things that caused me so much concern was we had a well that was shooting, fluid 40 feet up in the air and that kind of thing. And I believe that we need to take action that is expedient. And so I don't know, Mr. Chairman, and I will leave this to your decision, but could I make a motion on that topic because it's been brought up, that the council would approve a resolution to request an expedited process. Now, that may not get us anywhere, but we certainly need to put an emergency feel to this because I deem it an emergency. I sure don't want my drinking water contaminated, and I don't want to eat any beef from around here from cows that are contaminated. I do like a good steak. So, Mr. Chairman, could I make a motion that the council approve a resolution requesting the nation's procurement office to expedite the process of advertising and selecting, is it a petroleum?
I'd like for you to expand that because just like the second chair's talking about, that not only needs to be the engineer, it needs to be our contractor for the plugging, et cetera, whatever the.
If they could expedite their process with regard to our emergency needs of.
Yes, ma'am.
Based upon our concern of the environment and public welfare.
Second.
Second, perfect. Any other discussion?
I
Council?
have a comment. I think that's a great idea. And my follow-up comment is this: if we start going into Terra, we start going into compacting, unfortunately, we're gonna have to also deal with these abandoned wells. And that's just the nature of this wicked beast that we've been handed. We didn't manage it, but it got in our lap. We want to make sure the U.S. government is responsible for it. But as we move forward and we start pulling maybe our full-blown sovereignty over our energy development, we've got to handle these abandoned wells. So like it or not, it is an ugly beast, but I think we've got great legal counsel. And we can shift that responsibility over to the BIA. They managed it, not us. For 100 years, they managed it. We had no way to pull the trigger on this. So we need to continually respond to that notion that they managed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Yeah. I have a comment as well. The Minerals Council is, in this government, we're like a horse of a different color. And over here, we have immediate needs that are a little bit different than what, say, Head Start needs or what another program. And I believe that we are viewed as another program, which impedes our ability to do, look at the shareholders' best interest that we are elected to get these the orphan wells plugged. We have the gas needs, we have the business needs, and like you were talking about, Tara, I really think that, procurement for us, even though it's under, but that, I know that, the gaming, they pulled procurement out of the nation and they do it themselves. I know that the, not our farm, it's the ranch, they have requested to pull the procurement. Why? Because it takes such a long, lengthy process. That department is overwhelmed, it looks like, and I know they've hired some help, but still, like it took us 14 months to get our equipment. We're trying to get the newsletter and all our graphics done. I know I've been working on that since
Since you got here.
June? Well, since I got here, but we just now got the it's in my court right now. There's things that we need to have done that are, we need the geologists, we need the safety factor. So I just wanted to say that maybe that's something that we need to really be seriously looking at to do our own procurement and also our travel. That's another one. It takes reimbursements. We can go on and on, but I'm in favor of what second chair said. Let's call for the question, but I did want that comment on the record.
Yes. Are you ready to call for the question?
Oh, I have requesting the nation's procurement office to expedite the process with our emergency needs based on.
Our concern for the
Environment.
environment and the public safety. And public safety.
And all of public safety. Yes, sir, go right
I
ahead.
think if I remember, Councilwoman Harlan, you said to get this consultant in place. That's the RFP, I believe.
Yeah, just to expedite the process, the procurement process. And I think this could be attached to send over. I don't know if it'll work or anyway.
It's a good idea.
We try what.
It's on the floor, let's call
Councilwoman Harlan.
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn.
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle.
Yes.
Councilman Rebar.
Yes.
Chairman Waller.
it. Yes.
Secretary Yates.
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman.
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray. Yes. Motion passes.
And thank you.
Chair, can I have
Second.
one? In regards to the well that we thought was blowing out 40 feet in the air,
Mhm.
when they actually went in to work on that well, it was a header. It was actually a line connecting a header where you collect several production lines or saltwater lines. It was a production line, an old one, and when they dug it up, that's what it was. It wasn't a well. So it was on the oil company to fix. Thank you.
But I'll, then
I'd
let
like
me
to make
say,
a motion.
I'm familiar with that too. The well that was on their emergency list that we're going out to plug still remains an abandoned well, orphaned well. It's just not an emergency plugging, because it is not a threat to the environment or to the public.
I didn't know that it was still, I thought it was an old mud plug well that had blown out.
Is what we were told.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Councilman.
I'd like to make the motion, based upon the conversation. The motion will be that we take steps to start our own procurement for the Osage Minerals Council.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I have one. We just requested him to expedite it. Once we find that response out, then I think this should also be looked at. I want you to interject that the ranch is doing it. You've never held none of your LLCs to this. Your gaming's allowed it with no interference from the nation at all. And they don't even have to end up with the audit reports in some cases. We do. So I think that we can take care of that. And with that, any other discussion, call for the question.
I have a comment.
Yes, Jim.
This is a process that gaming took several months to do. I know I was on the commission. I don't think that the LLC just one day said, oh, we're gonna do our own procurement. There's a process to do that. And I don't know how I feel one way or the other to that, because I'm not sure that folks sitting over here are procurement specialists. I'm certainly not. So I worry about that in that regard. But I would like to see that these needs get taken care of by the nation, because if we hold on waiting to get our own system, that's just that much more of a delay. So I would just ask the gentleman across the way to go ahead and proceed with their needs through the procurement office that's set up right now.
I'd like to amend my motion that we start, that the Osage Minerals Council begin the process of our own procurement, to begin our own procurement, whether we have to hire someone or, I just believe that I think we need to at least look into it, evaluate it, what it will take and what we need to do. I mean, we have a year to do it, but in that year, we're losing gas by the decatherms or whatever it is. We're losing
Thank you.
barrels of, we're losing barrels, and our process is so blocked, bottlenecked, so that our government contracts are being impacted, and future grants are being impacted because we haven't been doing drawdowns and things aren't getting done. That's what I'm saying. This is another bottleneck in this process. I'm just trying to get it unjammed So at least let's start the process of looking at our own procurement.
I believe Councilman Redcorn's already covered that under the Terra and Tito. Actually, our council and I have talked about it, not anything selective, but we do need to review it. And I know we've taken hits over wanting to review how the United States rolls the Terra out, but we have to look at it, because if it fits, we're gonna demand it in our CFRs, and we're the only nation that can do that. They can't, these guys can't, no other tribe can. So that's where it's at right now. With that, Councilwoman?
I would ask for a clarification from Councilwoman Gray and Councilman Rebar, because what's been stated is two different resolutions. One was to proceed to it and one was to investigate. If the motion is to proceed, I'll be voting no. If the motion is to investigate, I can support that.
I made the motion to investigate, if you would,
I'll second that.
okay.
The second is amended the motion, and with that, call for the question.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar.
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
No.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Hello, reaction.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
It's lovely being in this family. Thank you very much, and I think that is the correct effort that we have. With that, we have any other item on the well test?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Same story, second verse. We've requested through the Orphan Well Committee to get a well tester lined up to do field tests on wells we think have market value. We went through Candy Thomas, and then through Tammy Leeper. This has gone through the process, and it's coming back, and we have a well tester, and same story with this one. Tammy Leeper said one time or one entry, but it's a highly specialized field. She's okay with recommending we go ahead and hire the field tester, the well tester.
Is that in form of a motion?
I make a motion that we hire White Palace as the well tester company to conduct well tests on our select orphan wells.
Second.
Second, is there any other discussion necessary? Let's call for the question.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar,
Abstain.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray. Yes. Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And I'd like to interject here that this was all recommended by committee. And I wanted to say, everything's been through the process, and I just want to tell my chair people is that, that's all I've been asking. And we're doing it. And I appreciate your diligence, because you guys were stepping way out there, and it's time. So with that, I just want to commend you all for the work and the process. Is everything in order so far? With that nod there, I'd like to go on to the item 4D, National Congress of American Indians. Councilwoman Gray.
Yes, last week, from Monday till Friday, we were out there. We began the committee work on 2 resolutions that this body had submitted to the National Congress of American Indians for consideration. The way that the process works, the whole executive committee looks at all the resolutions, and then from that, if it passes that, then it goes to the committees. So we were put in Land and Natural Resources Committee, both of the resolutions. Under that committee, then it goes to several subcommittees, and each one of them was put into a subcommittee, and one on energy and the other one on policy.
That's correct.
I'll think for a second. But anyway, we were sitting there through, so the the wonderful thing about it is that there was 3 members of Congress there. Congresswoman Angela Pratt, Congresswoman Paula Stabler, and Congresswoman Alice Goodfox. And so once we had the opportunity to sit and we were able to show them along with counsel, Wilson Pam Stem, they said, what can we do to help? Because, this is under the nation. So we were able to, each one of them at different times, because there were so many committees going on, but they stayed right there with us. They sat, and these are lengthy conversations that you have in debates of why we should move forward with Terra, why we should move forward with the ABB on those conservation areas that we were wanting. And we are actually sitting in a room of probably close to 75 individuals, and majority of those were climate change people. And so when we were talking about what we're wanting to do in our oil and gas, but what the beautiful thing that came down to it is that they came down to this, that we are exerting the sovereignty of our right, of our land, of what to do here. And so I want to turn it over to Wilson here in just a second, so he can give you a little bit more definitive, because he's the one who submitted them on our behalf. But at the end of the day, we were successful in getting both those resolutions all the way through every step. And I really appreciate the work of the congresswomen who, and I mean, you're sitting there for 4 hours and listening to everyone else, and when ours comes up, and then we were also asked to, the National Congress has a policy book, and where it's on, whether it's VAWA or children's issues, health issues, and then there's one on energy and land resources. And so we were able to put our input, which I think strengthened that document. And I really want to congratulate not only just the people the elected people in our room, but our attorney for him having that wealth and knowledge of our mineral estate. And that really was key. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Wilson, if you want to go to the front up there. Oh, and the reason the resolutions are not updated is because they take 10 days to get everything stamped, cleared, and everything. We thought we would have them, but we didn't want to put the what was submitted. We want you to see the final document. So as soon as we get them, I'll have Lacey send an email and make sure they're uploaded to our board booklet.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilman.
Well, I apologize, but I was wondering where the resolutions are. I'm looking in board booklet in our folders for the original resolutions. Are they in there?
Oh, I don't know if they're in there. I think they were emailed out. This was like weeks ago when he submitted them. You look under Wilson's
We can
emails.
send them around now again, if it's helpful.
Thank you, Abby.
And thank you, Councilwoman Gray. So, yeah, they were amended, there was negotiation, there were changes made, but they were not substantive, significant changes that undermined exactly what the Minerals Council wanted to accomplish. So there were 2 resolutions, one related to the American burying beetle, and one related to this issue of conservation areas, Fish and Wildlife Service, and so, as Councilwoman Gray said, with great support with Osage Congresswomen, we sat through long council meeting. It's like, okay, we have 17 resolutions today. Yeah. So it's like going through and wordsmithing 17. Ours came up. Ours was a very crowded meeting. It was mainly climate change concerned tribal leaders and activists, and who are understandably concerned because there are a lot of them from Alaska and it's significantly affecting their lives. So, they all agreed though that what happens within the Osage Nation territory and how the Osage Nation through its Minerals Council flexes its sovereignty and our relationship with the United States, that's our authority. We should be able to make decisions and have broad authority in that area. So There were a number of questions, but I think we answered those, we argued, we had individual discussions with people, and ultimately, we've got consensus on our resolutions. They went to the floor of the full National Congress of American Indians, and they just read the list, and everybody said they're good. So those are passed. I thought we would have them this morning. I know our colleague, and I want to just thank, my team at our firm, Abby Fain, who's here today, and Ashley Fixico, who many of you met. Ashley used to work at NCAI. And she's with us for probably a year before she goes off to Harvard, and hopefully Stanford Law School or something like that. She's a superstar.
There's other schools.
Oh, you would be great too, we really had an opportunity with a lot of things going on to try to work that through the process, and most of them were there to discuss climate change in our country. And, but we talked about our story, about our sovereignty, our history, and people responded very positively to that. And outside the room, they're talking a bit more about fossil fuels and I said, well, we've got a different history than you do, and you need to respect our land and our territory and our nation about how we conduct ourselves, and we believe it's responsibly done. And they said, we agree with that. Ultimately, we agree. They have views on climate change and a number of things related to protection of their reservation environments. We accept that. In Alaska, you got different rules and different impacts. They don't have reservations or Indian country mainly, but they've got a lot of issues, and we respected them.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. It was actually a good learning process for all of us, but we came together with consensus, no votes against ultimately after the amendments. So I want to thank again Councilwoman Margaret Gray for her leadership in these meetings. And I think we end up with a good product that we can use as we go to advance our interests on the ABB and on Terra. I think we have a good opportunity to say not only are these views ours that we hold strongly, but all of Indian country is with us on this. So that I think that's the value of an NCAI resolution. It doesn't mean the government's going to follow every resolution, they just don't, but it's an advocacy tool for us. That's an important one. It nationalizes our arguments. And I just want to congratulate this body for that.
Can you expand about, we were asked by Derek Betzo, who works for NCI, he's an attorney there, for us to review the policy document for NCI's overall energy policy. And we were able to look at it, and we looked at it and we said, there's some problems here. And we were able to work and discuss and debate in committee those changes, and we really convinced, we're very persuasive, and getting all, I mean, I'm not kidding, there was a lot of climate change people there because it's impacting the fisheries and the salmon and how the Corps of Engineers is rerouting their water sources. And so we were like very invested and asked questions about how this impacted us on them. But on the other side, we were able to make the discussion about what energy is in the policy. So you can.
Okay. So a lot of the draft policy that they were considering, and this I think to presidential candidates, like this is an NCAI view on what your presidential candidate policies ought to be. So important. Much of it was slanted towards climate change, toward renewable energy, all those things that are just fine, right? But they did not have enough information in there about tribes like the Osage Nation, about our minerals production. It did not have enough language related to tribal sovereignty and control of our own resources. And so we were able to make those changes. There were questions about that. But ultimately, the leaders who were there said, no, you're right. What happens on your land and what happens whether it's oil and gas or coal, because they talked about one of the things that came up was we had a debate with the Crow tribe and tribes in Washington State where the Crow tribe has had substantial coal resources. And they produced them, but were trying to bring them to market in Washington State in an area where some tribes felt like there could be some harm to their land. So they've been through these things before. And that we talked about that. And we agreed that, responsible energy development, whether it's oil, gas, or coal, all ought to be important part of this policy statement, and they agreed with us, and we inserted language to that effect, primarily focused on this idea of sovereignty and our relations with the United States, which is 1906 Act for us, which is amendments to the 1906 Act, which is all this complicated, interwoven set of tribal federal laws that we live under here. And we discussed it, and they ultimately agreed. We found consensus on it.
Thank you very much. Council, is any other questions? Councilman Red Eagle, then Councilman Redcorn.
Thank you, Chair. As I said in the meeting, the meetings for change meeting, I heard that you, brought out about the Bering Beetle. I think that was a good move. It's, what it does, I think, it just brings it out in the open. A lot of people, they don't know. Way out in Washington, states like that, they don't know what the Bering Beetle is. I didn't even know until we got here, But that was a good move because if there's a lot of influence that goes to DC from this organization, that's a good move. And it brings it to light, and people say, oh, those guys are having a hard time. Good move.
Thank you, sir. Council.
Just want to commend the, folks that went up there, Councilwoman Gray, and our council, Mr. Pipestem, and your coworkers, or under, whatever they are in your organization, to change the conversation of this national group to include the Osage. I'm sure it was a very difficult thing, considering the whole nation's moving toward, the greener, and we don't disagree with that, but we think we can do it better than what's happened for 100 years, which is they ripped off our resource, took it across county lines, and hurt our people. So if we are in a driver's seat, I think we can do it better, cleaner, and nicer, and have more respect for the people that it's impacting than what has been done for the last 100 years. So I thank you. I think it's just another avenue to fight for what we can be in the driver's seat.
Can I respond quickly?
Please. Then
I
Councilman
want you to know that we did state that based on our legal system, that the impacts that on Osage Indians, particularly elders, is undermined if there's barriers to our ability to do business here. And I think that was persuasive on that too.
Thank you. Councilman.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Since most of the discussion had to do with climate change, did you say?
Yes.
Just curious to know, because I don't follow much about that, because one year we're going to have an ice age, and next year we're all going to melt. I was just curious to know what was the consensus, the general consensus about the climate change. Are they worried about the recent documentation of the explosion of new Arctic ice that we're getting ready to enter an ice age? Or do they think the planet is warming?
Yeah, I don't know, Councilman Gray, you may have an answer for this. I mean, my sense was that it was less philosophical about who's right about those things. It was more about the specific impacts on the communities from which the leaders were from. And so there was climate change discussion, certainly, particularly Alaska had said, our lives are changing these ways. Certain animals that we rely upon or these things are going away. And so it's more practical to their circumstances. There was a lot of debate about salmon. So, unlike, that's not who we are, but there's Indians, that's who they are, right? And so these dams that have been built, or there's things related to, how salmon are killed. There was this Columbia River issue, which goes over more than one border, right?
So it wasn't global. It was more site-specific for each group in their particular interest.
Yeah, and it was to our benefit, really. There was not a discussion about, do we believe that climate change is human caused, right? This wasn't a debate about these larger, really political issues that get into the, internecine warfare between Democrats and Republicans. It was about how we've got this problem, and we're bringing it to the National Congress of American Indians, and we want you to agree with us And that was who we were too.
Yeah.
That's who we were too. And they accepted that, but there's a lot of things that, you know, for example, when you're talking about salmon and the impacts on Canada and Washington State and how these things operate. There was one of the resolutions that I recall that National Congress of American Indians calls on the United States and Canada to put tribal leaders at the table for discussions about what happens over these agreements that are being negotiated, that kind of thing. And to me, and I'm just my own self, Councilwoman Brady may want to comment, it's absolutely legitimate interests. Yeah, they're different than ours, very different. But we were part of that conversation because, you know, we're resolution number 4 under consideration, that one's 3 or 5. So we're in the room for it. But it was the opportunity for us to discuss our issues. We framed it in the context of sovereignty, Endangered Species Act, and accommodation of other governments instead of shutting us down. Conversations we've heard in this chamber, and also impacts on, you know, human beings, our own Osage head right holders, particularly elders who are relying upon revenues. And you know what? There was not a single person that shook their head at that or thought, you know what, I don't care, you're impacting the environment in a negative way. We're all about, we're environment. That's, in my view, that's largely white environmentalist views there. That's not tribal views, right? Tribal people understand sovereignty and impact and try to support others.
Yeah, and one thing that we pressed upon when you were talking about the global changes, that there were some Alaska Natives up there who said they'd never seen dirt on the ice. So now that they see it now and they understand that. But they also recognize that we live in an area that as long as it's done responsibly, and that's what we would always say, that we want to do responsible drilling and production here. And we want to do it safely. We understand that. But the position on the American Burying Beetle is that we used to have that 1.2 acre set aside for that, and then that was taken away, and we want to get that back. They were all in agreement. Why'd they take it away? And so we had support for that. That was really good that we had that. And it was a overall is that this is what you know, we've been at this for 100 years on oil and gas production, and they all asked a lot of really good questions, like, how come you aren't doing this yourself? You know, it was like they couldn't understand it. We were like, you're just getting 20%. Why aren't you all doing that? You know, so it was a really good, lively conversation. But we were able to express what our issues are. But had I not been there, and our legal counsel, that conversation would have never happened. So I appreciate those of you who were supportive of me going and attending, and hopefully in the future that many of you all will, you know, I'd like to continue to be supportive in that. That's where I'm seasoned at, is in that arena, you know, so hopefully we'll continue to be supportive of that. But I'd really like to thank our legal counsel for being right there, and I mean, there was a lot of, you know, and we also had an election, and the lady who won was Fawn Sharp, and we've had at length talk. In fact, when she announced her presidency for the National Congress, she did it at Osage Casino, at an oil and gas reservation, and she announced, and she is climate change, but she also said that because this is your sovereign right, this is your natural resource, you should be able to do and not have any barriers by the federal government, that they should be helping you. So in that way, we do have a new voice up there, and it's appreciated.
Great. Fawn Sharp, she's been reelected 5 times as the chairperson of the Quinault Nation in Washington State, impressive person. And she ran as the chairman of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, the chairman of the Ute Tribe of Utah, and the chairman of the Tunica Biloxi Tribe. And maybe there was another one, maybe it was just 4, but she had to get in the primary vote 50% plus 1 to avoid a runoff, and she got 63% of all of that.
Excellent.
I mean, so she's, that's an impressive list of tribal leaders there. And so she announced here at the Osage Reservation. So we've got long, positive friendships with her. And so within the structure of NCAI, I think we've got good friends. So, and again, to me, an NCAI resolution, we're not there to win that. That's a strategy and important part of a tool to go win our ADV and our, other issues. But it's an important tool, I think. It nationalizes our argument when we go engage, these different offices to try to make them, persuade them to make decisions that are important in our favor.
In 6 days. It's gonna be perfect timing. We're gonna add something to it that's gonna make it even better, that we need that support, and also congratulatory for her even getting this far. The Representative Quinault, I've dealt with them before, I've dealt with this young lady, and I'm just honored to know her, and I appreciate you taking care of that.
Chairman,
Calling me, I appreciate it.
I don't know if it makes sense for the Minerals Council to send her a congratulatory note.
Yes, we will.
Chairperson Sharp, who honored us by coming here to announce that she was going to run for that position. But something to think about. I don't know.
No, I'll have that taken care of, we'll get it out today. Council, with that, we're gonna move on. Thank you
That's all I
very
had for
much.
my report, and again, thank you all.
With that, thank you, sir, that was perfect. I have the last is enhanced oil recovery, discussion of technology in Norman, Oklahoma. Councilman Redcorn.
Thank you, Chair. This will be quick, I believe, because this is not hiring anybody. This is paid for through the grant. We just found out yesterday. So in prep for not being approved to go through the grant to pay for this, I added it to the agenda. But Candy Thomas said, yeah, they approved the granting it. So for Bill Lynn and myself to go to this discussion in Norman, Oklahoma. So I'll entertain any questions, but if that's okay, I want to say we don't need a resolution.
Oh, okay.
You moved
Your
to strike
table?
it.
You want to?
Move to
Move to
strike.
strike it. I'll
Move
second.
to strike it.
Thank you.
Councilwoman,
Next.
excuse me, for the record, strike it. Make a motion.
He did, and I seconded.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Councilman Redcorn, seconded by Councilwoman Harlan, to strike item number 4E. With that, call for the question.
Councilman Rivard,
Yes.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Read the email.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to have a motion go into executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Second, I have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Gray, seconded by Councilman Red Eagle, to go into executive session. Discussion?
Before we vote on that, I'm ready to go into executive as well, but I thought before the crowd leaves, because sometimes they leave when we're in executive, I could give just a really brief update on the annuitants for change meeting.
Wish you would, please
Okay.
do.
Yeah, we had that this week, and we really rolled up our sleeves and had just a wonderful meeting. We have all agreed that Article 15 in the Constitution is the primary target for, taking to Congress and asking to get this on for a constitutional revision. We hammered out with our new system here some of the issues, and legal counsel was wordsmithing, and we hope to be able to bring something to the council just for support, just to show we support the annuitants, and we'll hope to bring that to you on, we're really hoping for the 16th, but we'll see how it goes. We're gonna have another meeting on the day after biennial.
The 8th.
The 8th.
The 8th. I would at least have talking points available for that, and then we'll, of course, roll anything official out for Rod or something at the 16th. Actually, I talked to another councilwoman. At the very end of our agenda, which you would just receive back the comments from the United States government, it still has on the very last issues in which we would like to be spoke, that is not on the agenda. And that's what we will do, is we'll add it under talking points. I actually will have the council, something else of that nature, we will put on there, but we've already sent the agenda out, so you review that and you'll get where they're coming from, so we'll be prepared. With that, thank you so much. I heard nothing but great things. The last comment is that it's important. We're out here reaching out. You only hear about the things sometimes in this area that you didn't get done. But I'm very proud of you all because we're getting things done. I know that we're held to a different standard, and I appreciate that because we earned that standard. And if they want the best, you have to be the best. And that's what we're striving for, and each and every one of you do that, like go into executive session. Let's call for a question.
Chairman Waller,
Yes.
Secretary Yates,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foreman,
Yes?
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harlan,
Yes.
Councilman Redcorn,
Yes.
Councilman Red Eagle,
Yes.
Councilman Rebar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We're in executive session. We'll clear the chambers. Need a 5-minute break before we start up. Promise not to keep you that long.
Pizza's here.
Is it really? I'd like to get a bite in. I'm hurting.
Is the pizza here?